Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. Happy Tuesday. This is the Prospect Show, and I'm Adam Weinrib, joined as I am every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time by FanSided's prospect guru, MLB staff writer Eric Cole, prospect guy, Braves guy, World Series watcher in a couple of days. We've got the Los Angeles Dodgers back in the Fall Classic against the Toronto Blue Jays, an all-time bag fumble by the Seattle Mariners. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But today we wanted to get into some offseason content. I wanted to have fun. If you're a team that has not been involved in the postseason, you've undoubtedly been thinking trade machinations these past couple of weeks. And we've already got a few big names that are on the theoretical market, some of them more so than others. You've got the Freddie Peraltas, Nick Castellanos of the world. Their team's basically yelling, their time here has ended. But then you've got bigger names like Tarik Skubal, who may or may not have a giant gulf between him and his current team. I am of the belief that he and the Tigers should just run it back and try to win a World Series next year, regardless of his future destination. But what do I know? I've got a couple of trade packages in mind to improve some contenders and fill some holes. I want Eric to grade them. They're including plenty of prospect names we've discussed before. I tried to be fair and balanced, but of course I want Eric to say no to some and yes to some others. So we'll see where we net out. Maybe I did good. Maybe I did very bad. Eric Cole, welcome to the show. Again, off-season content in gear. And of course, we have our World Series matchup finalized, potentially more upsetting for the Mariners than it is joyful for the Blue Jays. I don't know. I'm kind of stuck in between here.
Yeah. Obviously an incredibly tough thing to have happen to you when you're up 3-1 in Game 7. It looks like you are going to go to the World Series, and instead George Springer with like 1.5 legs just hits a 3-run homer and just effectively ruined an entire generation of Mariners fans. But I thought it was a really good series. I mean, the Dodgers series was just kind of a stinker, unfortunately. The Brewers just didn't really show up. But, this was a very fun series. I was pulling for the Mariners, admittedly, mainly because I just have no real attachment to the Blue Jays. And, maybe there's a little bit of lingering resentment from some early 1990s World Series stuff that I won't necessarily want to revisit. But at the same time, they were two good teams, and it was a really hard-fought series, coming back, and then Seattle, all of a sudden takes the lead in Game 5 to be one game away, and then obviously the last two games didn't go their way. But overall, it was a fun series. A lot of young guys for us to watch too, which is especially fun for me.
Yeah, it was objectively, if you like baseball, you probably liked that series. It was very funny to watch the Mariners sort of turn into the grip it and rip it team, while the Blue Jays were the ones that put a little bit more pressure on the defense, were the ones who, of course, got the big breakthrough, the George Springer home run. He has been there before, to say the least. He's one of the most prolific playoff home run hitters of all time, let alone the modern era. And he came through yet again. Edward Basallo threw 2 innings in Game 6. With the Mariners down 5 runs, and then he was the choice to come in the 7th inning. I don't like it. I think it was a bad idea, actually. But while we're talking about a team in Seattle that was on the precipice, up 2-0 and headed home, and lost games started by George Kirby and Luis Castillo to even get to Game 7, when they went up 2-0 in Game 3, I actually thought they were going to polish this off and finish it. They did not. The Blue Jays offense woke up, as they have so many times this year. Relentless team. Best comeback team in baseball, 49 during the regular season. Not surprised they added another one to the docket yesterday. But it left me wondering, it's been a long time since the Seattle Mariners have been here. They have never been one step beyond here to the World Series. It's hard to imagine a better chance than up 2-0 headed home trying to close out the series. And a lot of Mariners fans, I'm sure, feel gutted right now. But this is a franchise with a strong farm, a very strong pipeline, a lot of offensive talent. The rotation wilted as the postseason dragged on, which was surprising. During midway through Game 6, they had a near 7 ERA in the series, and Kirby improved that somewhat, but the rotation really struggled in this set, especially after they had a 2-0 lead. They fell apart. Do you believe in the possibility of the Mariners returning to the ALCS and eventually making the leap to the Fall Classic? I'll expand it to the next 5 years, given what they have coming, the Lazaro Montes, the Colt Emersons of the world. Do you think they have enough to fight through a crowded American League and finally reach the Fall Classic? Because I know the pennant would mean everything to those folks. That's kind of the saddest part about this, that, hey, the Blue Jays fans, it's been 30 plus years. Like, they're hungry. They need a title desperately. They have a good shot at one. Mariners fans, they've never even been to the dance. I can't think of a fan base that would purchase more "we won the pennant" hats than Seattle, and they don't get that shot. Do they get it back, in your opinion?
It's very close. The issue I have with the Mariners is that their ownership doesn't really like to support the club the way a lot of owners of contending clubs do. I think that the young talent's coming, but you just can't cover every position, right? And at some point, you have to kind of make a bet on either a big time bullpen arm or a rotation arm or a lineup piece, because even with the best farm systems, there's just going to be blind spots in terms of positions. And the Mariners just haven't really shown much willingness to fix that problem externally. They just hope that they run into the right guys with their draft classes and all this other stuff. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. But I mean, again, I think the rotation might have just gotten tired. And that just happens this time of year. Sometimes the innings start adding up, and the Mariners are one of those teams that did lean on their starters a lot in the regular season. So they may have had more innings on them than a lot of other teams would have. And I like the arms. So I like their chances. I don't necessarily love them because at the end of the day, the American League is very, very difficult. The Blue Jays are probably going to be good for a while. Yankees are going to be consistently trying to compete. Then you have teams like the Astros, the Red Sox. The Royals are could be an up-and-coming team if they just do a couple things right. Tigers are obviously going to keep getting better and better with all those young guys coming. It's more of a bet on the field than me hating what the Mariners are doing, but there's certainly some things they could be doing a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that's what cuts through last night like a knife for folks in Seattle. Although, again, in order to feel that pain, you have to have gotten close to the mountaintop. It's the first time in a long time that Mariners fans have had enough moments to feel like it was genuinely possible. So that's something, but as a fan of the New York Giants, I know it's definitely no comfort to be like, wow, you got really close to having something exciting to cheer about. Yeah, but then an historic collapse happened. So, what do you want from me? Best of luck to the folks in Seattle, and let's just get the Sonics back as an NBA expansion team so that we can double their title chances. How about that? That feels like a worthwhile endeavor at this point in time. The Seahawks Super Bowl banners fly forever, though. So you got those. I'm definitely feeling for the fine folks in Seattle. Excited for the World Series matchup and some new blood in Toronto getting in there. They certainly have a better chance to take down the Dodgers than the Yankees did last year. I'll go on record saying that. I don't know if they will, but they play together. They play team defense. They play relentless offense in an opposite manner to what the Yankees did at their peak last year. And they have home field advantage in this series, which I think a lot of people forget. So that begins Friday. We will see where that goes. And then when it's done, 5-day window for the qualifying offer, the offseason officially begins. We can start talking trade, talking turkey. Hello to everyone who showed up in the comments and who wants to know where Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar are going this offseason. Miguel Andujar actually might be on the move. Still a good major league player. Clint Frazier is in the bleachers at Yankee Stadium doing a podcast. I don't think he's getting traded anywhere. I have come up with a couple of trade proposals for Eric Cole. I want him to talk me through them. I've tried to make some logical fits. These are all fits that we've talked about in the past or that are bubbling in the baseball ether right now. And I tried to build packages that make sense, but I do want Eric to tell me, yes, you are smart, or no, you're a dumb guy. That's not going to work. And let's start with the Red Sox trading for Joe Ryan. I think all Red Sox folks, insiders, analyzers are aligned right now that what they need is a number 2 who is better than Brian Bayo. If they go into this offseason, they bring Alex Bregman back. That's a win. They bring another big bat in instead, or in addition to Kyle Schwarber. I mean, there are plenty of wins on the table for the Red Sox, but their preeminent need with what they have on the farm and what they have in the big league roster and their window is to slot somebody in behind Garrett Crochet, who in game 2 of a playoff series, you go, yay, rather than you never know. Like maybe Bayo's great, maybe he's fine. And they were connected to Joe Ryan at the deadline. That never happened. Conflicting reports on how close they got. But that's who I'm sending their way. There's some other big number 2s or number 1As available, but the Red Sox, Joe Ryan talks feel inevitable. So Joe Ryan to Boston, 2 years. Jhostynxon Garcia, Connelly Early, and Franklin Arias. Obviously, you have to go pretty big here. And so Arias is a guy rising up the top 100, but who may or may not have a role in Boston, and who I think if you have the shot at Ryan and the shot at everything that comes after that, I think you have to take it. But grade the package. Who says no? And if no go, what's it missing?
So I like this trade proposal, especially for what Joe Ryan should cost. The Twins would have gotten more for him at the trade deadline because that extra half season matters a lot in terms of value and adding on prospects. My issue with it is that I think that for the Twins to be particularly interested in moving Joe Ryan, it might have to involve some sort of salary relief because their ownership is notoriously cheap. So I wonder if in the place of, like, let's say, maybe Early, that they want the Red Sox to take on one of their contracts that's particularly problematic for them. Now, that said, it's not a slam dunk, right? Because Jhostynxon, a relatively recent riser, don't really know how his skills are going to translate in the big leagues yet. It's genuinely debatable because he had a tough time after he got called up. Connelly Early, again, is not gigantic. He looked really good in his starts in the regular season, but the stuff isn't like mortal lock. He is going to get opposing hitters out for years to come. And then in Arias, I like him a lot. I like, hit over power, really good defending shortstops. But there's a real question as to whether or not he's going to hit the ball hard enough in the big leagues to be an impact player, as opposed to be an above average regular who's like, you like to play him in defense, but maybe he's your number 7 hitter. He'll occasionally run into one, but he's not going to get super excited. I think that the Twins would seriously consider this offer. And if they're high on Arias, it's particularly appealing. But I do wonder a little bit that the Twins are even going to bother moving Ryan. It's only going to be to get their payroll where they want it to be, and make space that way, as opposed to just taking on more talent. Because at the end of the day, it feels more and more like the Twins are just desperately trying to make as much money as possible while spending as little as possible, and that this sort of trade doesn't necessarily save the money that I think that ownership might want it to.
And good shout in the comments that the Twins get more salary relief from a Pablo López trade than a Joe Ryan deal. So, hey, maybe that's more appealing. But I just think the upside of Ryan is more aligned with what the Red Sox are looking for versus,
100%.
Versus having to pay López and having to grit your teeth through his injury worries, maybe his aging curve. I think Ryan's a little bit more of a sure thing. So I think in that instance, if the Twins counter and say, you can have Pablo López and take his money for what you just offered us for Ryan, the Red Sox go back and either say, what if we add this extra piece for Ryan, or no, thank you, we're going to move on to some of the other relatively big names. And we're going to be talking about those big names on this show. I'm going to be sending them to other places, but rest assured that every pitcher mentioned on this podcast is a Red Sox target, or should be. And I think you can safely create a package around any of those names going to Boston as well. All right. I am going to send a catcher who I think his availability may have gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. And I don't know where it currently stands, but I do want to, this is a flame I want to stoke. I want to be talking about this person during the offseason. And I know the Padres have an eternal catching vacancy and a little bit of instability there right now. Mike Schilt gone, future of AJ Preller. There is no contract extension. There has been a lot of talk about his job security lately, even though there is no one who moves and shakes like AJ Preller. He's put the Padres where they are. Not afraid to take risks. If he's at the helm long term, I think it's likelier this happens. But Adley Rutschman would do wonders for the Padres. Samuel Basallo has been locked down by Baltimore. Is he a catcher? Is he a first baseman? Is he a DH? All I know is he's there for a very long time, and Adley Rutschman is not. So Adley to San Diego, Cash Mayfield, Jagger Haynes, and Omar Cruz to Baltimore. This was tough to settle on a centerpiece for me, quite honestly. And I know the Padres could be tempted into doing basically anything, but this is the package I have given you to grade. What are your thoughts on Adley to San Diego and the potential return?
So I do like Mayfield, and I suspected that the Padres would like Mayfield. This one I don't like as much, but the idea of trading Rutschman is fundamentally problematic for me. I think that the Orioles still think he is very good, but is more expendable than he was. Not just like we need to get rid of him. He's just a little more expendable. I also don't think that Baltimore has a lot of confidence in Basallo behind the plate, which if that's the case, trading Adley is just a uniquely bad idea. But at the same time, if maybe they are willing to listen on a package for Adley, and if the package is good enough, then they could stomach putting Basallo behind the plate, or let's say Ethan Salas is in a trade for Rutschman or something like that. Then maybe we have a long-term plan there. We can have Basallo behind the plate for a couple years while Salas gets ready, or maybe we go out and just buy some journeyman catchers, because a lot of teams just do that. They just get guys who have done it before and that they can play 140 games behind there without hurting themselves. They might not hit, but that's kind of the catchers that hit are more of the exception than the rule at this point. So I don't like it as much, only because I don't think that the Orioles would go for it. I think that the Padres would be considering Adley's issues last year, I think this is fair. Maybe you put tiers in there instead of Mayfield, for example. Like that's another name that I would like in this sort of package, and maybe that's more appealing to the Padres. But I think that if the Orioles are going to be convinced that you have to treat him like a former number 1 pick who made an All-Star game and won a Silver Slugger, and they're not going to, and the Padres probably aren't going to go for that because he was just obviously had injury issues and did not have a good year, and there's real questions about him. The Orioles want to make sure they get maximum value, and they don't have a lot of faith in the backup option at catcher. So it's a hard trade to make with the two teams involved. I don't think it's an unfair trade, but it's probably one that I don't think it's done.
Yeah, and the more time that passes, right in the wake of the Basallo extension, I think, us content creators who are always thinking about where to send people, we're like, Adley, like you're just buzzing, sending 12 sites can write about Adley Rutschman. And now that we're sitting here in mid-October, I do think it's much more likely that he is not terribly in play this offseason, especially given the way Basallo closed the year after the extension. Love the bat. I'm just as unsure as the Orioles probably are about where his long-term future lies. And giving Adley up now, deeply silly to me. But then again, Michael Elias has done things I found deeply silly in the past. So get Baltimore some pitching. You're going to have to. This is probably not the best route to do it, but just throwing it out there. Okay. I have come up with 2 large ones to have you assess. And by the way, I'm having a great time, and I think we should probably make this a recurring. We should probably do more trade packages as the offseason goes on. But I have built I'm trying to send Tarik Skubal to the Mets. I don't think Tarik Skubal should go anywhere. I think the Tigers should just try to run it back and realize that they made the ALDS Game 5 this year. We're the best team in the American League for most of the season. Have a farm that's about to graduate McGonigal and Max Clark. Just keep Tarik Skubal and try to win a World Series next year, and then whatever happens. Your window will still be open even if you don't want to pay him. But let's say he is traded. The Mets are going to be interested. If I'm the Tigers, I'm not trading him to the American League. This was impossible because you could add, 2 more names and I would still go, I'm not sure that's enough, but it is only 1 year. It's contingent on Steve Cohen extending Skubal, which I'm sure he would do, but hasn't been done yet. Jet Williams, Brandon Sproat, Will Watson for 1 year of Tarik Skubal. Where are we at on this?
This is another one I liked and I don't love. Now, I will say this. I am 100% with you. The idea that the Tigers might trade Skubal is objectively insane to me. And that I think what's not being keyed in enough on is that for there to be a $250 million gap in talks, both Skubal's asking for a lot of money, completely fair. I mean, the guy's about to win his second Cy Young. He's probably one of the best pitchers of his generation. But it also means the Tigers' offer was obscenely low. And you wonder how bad that relationship is right now, considering how they're handling these negotiations at the moment. So the short version of the story is, so I think that Jet Williams is a good inclusion, and I like Will Watson in there as well. I think he's kind of an undervalued piece in that Mets system. The question is Sproat, and I am not going to be. I don't even know if this will probably be a majority opinion, but there's a lot of people who like Sproat a lot. He has a good mix of pitches, and if he figures things out and can sequence things well, he can be a very good middle of the rotation guy for a long time. If I am the Tigers, I want Jonah Tong, and that is where the conversation has to start. I don't think I think trying to get them for whatever reason, and I don't even know if this is correct, but the Mets don't seem remotely interested in moving McLean. Which again, that's if they're going to place their bets. Fine, place their bets. McLean looked really good. I have long-term questions about that command, but blah blah blah. But if I'm the Tigers, I want a blue chip guy, and Jet is a bat I like. But he's just kind of one of those speedy guys who can connect for power. I wonder how much impact his bat's going to be. He's going to be like a nightmare when he does have good games. I just don't know how often those good games are going to happen in the big leagues. Whereas if I have Tong in addition, I'm willing to take that risk on Jet Williams and see if he can be that kind of dynamic spark plug kind of guy. But I also got a guy who's just going to be a really tough matchup for everybody because of his funky delivery. And if it's me, I want Tong over Sproat in this package, but I don't think it's unfair at all. But if I'm the Tigers, I would probably want Tong instead of Sproat in this particular package. But again, I don't think that's a universal opinion, and I think we're in the ballpark of packages that the Tigers would entertain.
I think that's probably true. I see the comment adding a Christopher Sanchez to this package for Philadelphia. Sanchez is locked down so cheap. He's on a 4-year, $22.5 million deal that goes through 2028 with team options after that. I mean, if you're trading for Skubal, you are trading him to add him to Christopher Sanchez, not dealing. For 1 year of Skubal and you're giving up Christopher Sanchez and these two top prospects, I think Philly says a pretty hard no here. But I am curious as to your thoughts.
Well, Tigers fans would drive Skubal to the airport.
Yeah.
Full stop. Like, Sanchez is a very good pitcher. Andrew Pater, I'm a little down on, but he could be really interesting. And then at the end of the day, with Aiden Miller, that's a big time bet. I would make that trade in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would as well. We appreciate everybody joining us and weighing in. Is there anything we miss? Any other packages you want us to talk about? Well, good news for you. We're going to be doing this segment on future shows as well. I've got one I want to carry over to next week's show, which will, of course, be themed about what we've seen in the World Series at that point, plus any prospect updates from the Arizona Fall League and any of your comments. And Eric, you're getting some love for some honest takes from folks. You're wearing the Braves jersey, but you're not letting your bias leak in. I think that's something we can take pride in here on the Baseball Insiders Prospect Show.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to tell lies. I will be I like having honest conversations about baseball. I will have the teams. The guys that I'm rooting for are not necessarily the guys that I think are good. I was a big Mike Soroka fan. I remain a big Mike Soroka fan as an example of that. But at the same time, I'm not going to pretend that he's something that he's not. And that's just kind of how I try to evaluate things. I think being honest is, especially with what we do, is important. At least taking a fair opinion as opposed to not being an uninformed one.
I prefer complete dishonesty. You will never get an honest opinion from me as long as I am hosting the show. No, we appreciate the conversations. We appreciate everybody joining us and bringing some things to our attention. I see this Ketel Marte to the Mets comment. That's interesting as well. Perhaps pocket that for a future show. I've seen such crazy corners of the internet speculating that Francisco Lindor could be a trade candidate this offseason. I don't buy that, but that's how wild the discourse can get. So we'll distill some of it on the Prospect Show and some on the Baseball Insiders with FanSided's Robert Murray. That is tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern. Also, stay tuned. We'll be talking about the NL Silver Slugger finalists, which are revealed tomorrow morning exclusively on fansided.com. Robert Murray and I will be chatting about those as well. Plenty more Silver Slugger content to come. Thanks for joining us here on the Baseball Insiders.